Hi everyone. Welcome to the Troyan YouTube channel here with another rocker reaction. Um, the trick with reaction videos in general is that a lot of people get joy out of someone hearing a song for the first time and their minds being blown from it. And unfortunately for me, in terms of doing reactions, I've heard a lot of this stuff before, and even bands that I haven't heard before, I've heard stuff that's very similar to, and so I've been doing the music thing as a active musician for over 10 years now. So there's not a lot of stuff I haven't seen. And so sometimes someone will try to play me something that they're like, whoa, this is so off the wall and crazy. Have you heard anything like it? And then I'm like, yeah, I have. Which is, it's a bit unfortunate for people trying to blow my mind because they don't normally succeed with that. Sometimes they'll succeed with just like, wow, that was a great, well written song. But in terms of blowing my mind with like a genre or I didn't know you could do that musically, that tends to not happen much anymore. And so today's request was someone who asked me. It was Tommy who views the channel. He was saying that, I know you probably know the song, but I just want to know your thoughts on it. And I think that's part of what appeals people to this channel is just, what Greg's thoughts are on the song rather than, oh, what do I think of this first time hearing it? Because a lot of this stuff, I cut my teeth on musically, I'm intimately familiar with. And so this song today is one I'm intimately familiar with. It's Photograph by Def Leppard. I mean, for those who have bothered to check out my music, I feel like the Def Leppard influence is pretty apparent. Um, there's a song on the first album called I Want the World to Know, which very much has a Def Leppard influence in the guitar playing. Which is a shame that my vocal performance is really, really abysmal on that track. It's really bad. I think it's a great, well-written song, and it is probably the worst vocal I've ever done on an album. I really wish we had gone a different direction with it. It's just like so. Uh, and I do think I make good music too, but I'm very honest with my critiques. So I will honestly critique my own music and tell you when I think it's great and when I think it's terrible, and I will honestly critique other bands and tell you when I think it's great and when I think it's terrible. I try to be as fair as possible. Um, and so this song, my thoughts on, I think this is one of the best Def Leppard songs, like maybe like top two or three. This is top tier Def Leppard. I know a lot of people prefer the earlier stuff before they got as poppy as they did. They progressively got poppier until they got to Hysteria. Um, but I think this is a great song. All American Rejects covered the song live once. It was pretty good. But yeah, you know what? Let's examine the songs, see what happens. So this is Def Leppard and Photograph. All right, so I'm doing more pauses maybe than usual because I guess I've been talking with some other reactors, and I guess YouTube is getting much harsher with the copyright strikes and blocking videos. So this is a earlier pause than maybe I would have done otherwise. But I remember watching a VH1 documentary, and someone was talking about the brilliance of Def Leppard and how every musical part was a hook. And I think you can tell that right here. The guitar riff is a hook. The drum pattern is a hook. The vocal line is a hook. Like everything is just grabbing you in more and more and more. And what's great is that nothing is distracting from the other parts of the song. Like they're not clashing, they're not competing for attention, but they're doing this way where you're just like, oh, I like that, and you get into the groove of it, and then they do a different thing like, I like that, I'm in that groove now. Oh, I like this other thing, I'm in that groove now. You keep getting more and more sucked in, and that's really, really great pop songwriting where each individual part of the song sucks you in. So that's really, really brilliant. And then as far as lyrically, and the song is about pining for a lover who isn't necessarily available. So pining for someone that you just you fell in love with a photograph. That person isn't necessarily even in front of you. Pictures of Lily by the Who also adjust this lyrically. I also addressed this lyrically on my first album. I'm really not trying to just plug my band so much with this video, but when you're talking when you're talking to a guy who's done hair metal for 10 years and you're asking my thoughts on Def Leppard unscripted, it's like, oh, this band that I have a lot of similarities with, I have similarities with, and I'm going to share the story. There's a song on the first album called Merle that sort of addresses that same thing from a different perspective, a little bit of a more romantic perspective, and versus Pictures of Lily and Photograph are a little bit more lustful. But you know, good lyrical idea, great hooks, phenomenal performances all around. Let's get back to it. Okay, so what we have here, we have a great utilization of the band's two guitars, where once the second guitar kicks in, it just gives that same chord progression more energy. It feels a little bit more metal, but not so metal that the average pop listener won't be able to gravitate towards it still. It just gives it more energy, makes it more exciting, despite the tempo not really needing to pick up, and, still keeping, it's another hook. It's building, it's building, and building and also the vocals build in addition to that, where it starts off as sort of a single vocal, then builds, the layers and layers and layers, and it's building to even more layers with this pre-chorus, which we'll get to right now. And before we get to the chorus, man, a great, cool looking band. They're performing well. That Union Jack shirt is just so freaking iconic. The band looks awesome. They're playing great. I love when lead singer and guitarist share a microphone. I love the sharing of the microphone. Not during COVID season, obviously, but I love the sharing of the microphone. It's just very cool. It's something that was done a lot, in like 50s and 60s bands and bands that were directly influenced by those 50s and 60s bands that were not ashamed of pop hooks. But then as you got into heavier and heavier bands, it's like, no, give me my own space with my microphone. Man, I think it's fun. It's band unity, and it's a callback to those, early days of recorded pop music. So I think it's awesome. Yeah, so a great killer chorus. It's actually pretty simple. You've got sort of like a kind of an arpeggiated riff there, and it's really just a held out vocal line, but just with layers and layers and layers of harmonies. It's sort of interesting where Jim Steinman was supposed to work with Def Leppard on an album, and the personalities clashed. And one of the things that Jim Steinman said is because when you think about it, they'd seem like they'd be a good fit. With the epic gang vocals and the passionate love songs, but the songs, Jim said the songs were a little bit too simple and lacking depth, and that a lot of it is glossy production. And I agree and I disagree in that I think that glossy production is definitely a big part of it, but I think they are tightly well constructed pop songs in addition to that. But like they're musically it's not overly complex. But it doesn't need to be. The point of it is that everything is working cohesively to make something great, and that's what you're getting right here. All right. Great finger point, but also love cowbell. Cowbell is sort of a lost art. There are so many great things that sort of died off with 80s bands. Like there's a lineage of rock. And the 70s bands loved the cowbell, and so did 80s bands. And then once you got past the 80s, they're like, no, never again, no more cowbell. Which is why on my first album we had a song that had cowbell prominently featured called "I Like the Way I Rock." Anyway, but seriously, I love good cowbell. The song has good cowbell. And can we just say a perfect guitar solo? For me, a great guitar solo, there's a lot of different approaches you can take, but my favorite kinds of solos are songs within a song, a constructed melody where there's still room for flash, there's still room for shredding, and sometimes you do just want a shred-tastic, melt your face off solo. But I love those solos that are songs within a song where you can hum every note. This is one of those solos. Brilliant. All right, so there you go. That is Photograph by Def Leppard. And let's see how embarrassing my suggestions are. You can see what's going on in my psyche here. All right, Van Halen Hot for Teaser. No one on this channel will be surprised that's suggested. 80s sing-alongs with a picture of Bruce Springsteen. Who would think Greg likes Bruce Springsteen in the 80s? More Def Leppard. Shocking. Van Halen, Love Walks In. Great tune. More mix of 80s. Smooth jazz. That's right. I like some smooth jazz. I'm subscribed to Dr. Sax Love. Let's see. What is this? I'm subscribed to Telesur English. I appreciate a variety of news sources. Guns N' Roses Paradise City. Brian May of Queen inducts Def Leppard at the 2019 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Ooh, that's interesting. I did not watch that. PBS. Oh, the debate's on right now. I'm gonna watch it in the morning. Um, let's see, that's The Hill, another news source I subscribe to, and Empire Files. So basically, it's saying, "Hey, Greg, do you want to watch some more news?" Not right now. I'm good. And done watching the news for the day. I'll watch it in the morning. So, wrap up thoughts on Def Leppard's Photograph. I think it's a perfect pop song. I think it's a song that would work with pretty much any generation where a rock band is a viable pop force. So with All American Rejects covering it, they made it sound like a contemporary emo song of its day. Um, and if it was done in basically any decade since it came out, could have been a hit if it was done in the right context. Maybe not the '90s, because you just weren't allowed to be like this poppy and like you couldn't have this slick of vocals. Actually, no, a Britpop band could have done this. Like Oasis could have done this in the '90s and gotten away with it, but like an American act could not have gone away with this in the '90s, which is unfortunate. But I think it's a great timeless song. I think it's really, really great. And if you don't like it, I think you're lying. If you don't like Photograph by Def Leppard, I think it is because of inherent biases against '80s music or against pop, rather than like judging the quality of the piece. If I'm being completely honest, I think that this is the kind of song where basically almost every human probably likes it. And that if you pretend to not like it, 993 people gave this a thumbs down. Um, I'm calling shenanigans. I think that this is the kind of song where just like, if you're just like, I'm only into like Metallica and Pantera, and this stuff is too wimpy for me. If you're like one of those guys who is lying to yourself about how much you enjoy a good pop hook, and you had some hardships in life, so you listen to hard music to like feel tough about yourself, then maybe you'll be like, oh man, Def Leppard sucks. If like you're just like hiding behind a veneer of like, I'm so tough, I can't listen to any wimpy stuff, like secretly you like it. Secretly you like it, and you don't want to admit it because you think that's going to make you lose tough guy points. And people are just like, I don't listen to anything that's pop. Pop is for wimps. No, no. The best rock songs utilize pop hooks. Those timeless classics utilize pop hooks. Bohemian Rhapsody has parts that you can sing along to because it uses pop melodies. Don't Stop Believin' uses pop melodies. Yesterday uses pop melodies. Like the biggest songs of all time, those classics that everybody knows, uses pop hooks. Even Metallica, Enter Sandman, uses pop hooks. And so there's no shame in it. And I think the band does it extremely well. I think this is them at the height of their powers. This era plus Hysteria, like that's when they were batting 1,000, hitting the big home runs. I mean, it's it's really really great, and I hope I have thoroughly given my thoughts on this. Um, if you disagree, um, you look. I don't think it's the greatest song of all time. I think there's a lot of songs I prefer. Def Leppard isn't even in my top 20 favorite bands. Um, but I think this is well crafted, and I don't really see any flaws with it. Um, the only thing that I would say was there was something that I will say this, and I'm going to try to articulate this. There is something about the production of Def Leppard, like earlier Def Leppard, where it felt like it was lacking something in some way, or maybe it's gonna sound really weird and hard to describe, but it's almost like in a lot of early Def Leppard albums, it's like there's a hiss that never leaves, and then as you got further along in hair metal, things got more polished, there was more clarity, and so that sort of like vague hiss that was always in the background of Def Leppard was gone. And then like a lot of other '80s bands never really had that. It's really hard to describe, but like some sort of like maybe it was the room noise of where they were, but the later '80s bands that the genre is really known for didn't have that sound to it, and so it's this weird mixture of organic sounds and inorganic sounds which is really, like sort of, it's like there's elements of the new wave of British heavy metal and elements of hair metal at the same time coming together in a weird way where it's not as heavy as those new wave of British heavy metal bands. It's not as polished in terms of clarity as other like 80s acts. Maybe just like the frequencies and the polish, but what I would say it's very distinct production wise. And I know my buddy Jamie, who's watching this, is shouting at the computer and is gonna write me a book. And so I will be done. But I will say that's one thing that maybe I didn't like about as much when I was younger, because like when I compare it to like the production of like Blue Tears or something, where just I don't know, it didn't have that faint hiss in the background. So that was the only thing that bothered me about when I was younger, but really no complaints. Okay, so now that's the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Y'all have a good one. Bye everyone.